Well, tonight I was deciding what I was going to do at the Bible study time. I have not a long series. I'm just covering certain things of similar vein in the last couple Bible studies. But I'm going to do a little something different that's influenced by what's happening in our world today. I want to give a Bible study entitled Revelation 18. Revelation 18. Now, I want to be very clear about something, about what this Bible study is not. The purpose of the study is not to set dates, okay? I will not be setting any dates. The purpose of this Bible study will be to not give specific identifications. In other words, I'm not going to identify who the king of the south is, the king of the north is. I'm not going to be identifying exactly who Babylon is. I'm not going to be giving strong identifications. Now, someone could ask then, well, if you aren't setting dates, and if you aren't giving some specific identifications, why are you speaking about prophecy? Why are you talking about Revelation 18? I think for one thing, I think how you answer that question will understand how you and I view prophecy. You will understand if you view prophecy the way I do, or you view prophecy another way. Because those of you who are familiar with my speaking know that I don't like to set dates, and I don't like to identify things dogmatically. Because quite frankly, as I've said many times, those who speak dogmatically are going to prove themselves to be false prophets because they're going to be wrong. So there's a good way not to be called a false prophet, and that's not to set dates and make identifications. Now you say, but Dave, you share your opinions. I sure do, and I'm going to share some thoughts tonight. But there's a difference between sharing possibilities and then sharing what thus saith the Lord, because when the Lord hasn't spoken, and someone speaks on his behalf, that is not a good thing. So again, I'm going to focus on these things. I want to focus on some lessons tonight. I want to focus on the ultimate. We're going to read these verses in Revelation 18. You're going to notice who the ultimate enemy is. Because I'm not happy with what's going on in our world. Many of you are not either. Many of you may be trying to be distracted by something. And you have to deal with your way of coping. But I'm not happy with what's going on, and so I watch what's going on. I pay attention to it, but I want to know who the ultimate enemy is, and Revelation 18 talks about that. I want to talk about the traits of Babylon. The traits of Babylon. I had an interactive Bible study maybe 6 weeks ago about who is Babylon, and I was a little bit shocked. I was shocked that there were so many variety of answers. I kind of thought we'd almost have groupthink on that. Not that we planned to have groupthink. I just thought most of us would have a similar opinion. And I was a little shocked. I mean, I wasn't disappointed. Understand that I wasn't disappointed. I was just shocked because there were more theories about who Babylon was than I thought was going to happen. So we're going to talk about traits of Babylon. By the way, I think Babylon is a system. That's my opinion. And so it's not, we'll see, we talk about a city. People will wonder if it's a city or a nation. I think it's a system, but that's, and I thought most people would say that in the interactive Bible study. Probably that may have been the majority opinion, but it wasn't the only opinion. I just tell you that so you know the frame of reference. We're going to look at traits about Babylon. We're going to look about traits about merchants. Merchants. In fact, when I originally did this study, I almost called it the merchants of Revelation 18. The merchants of Revelation 18, because I want to focus on the merchants, but Revelation 18 is more than the merchants, so I didn't want to restrict the title to involve the merchants. And then I want to focus on a main lesson, which is going to be a Christian living message. Surprise, surprise, that's what I like to talk about. A quick outline about Revelation 18. Revelation 18, verses 1 through 3, an angel talks, and we're going to see what that angel says. That's Revelation 18, verses 1 through 3. Then Revelation 18, verses 4 through 20, another voice from heaven comes. From Revelation 18, verses 4 through 20. And then finally, the very last part, Revelation 18, verses 21 through 24, a mighty angel talks. So there's 3 different segments of talking by the angelic world. And so again, those are in quote marks if you read the Revelation 18, and we're going to see what they say. So again, that's what we're going to talk about today. Before I launch into, you can be turning to Revelation 18, but I want to make some comments. one thing I don't like to do, I don't like to spend a lot of time complaining about what's going on. First of all, I don't want to put you in a bad mood, and you're keeping up with things. But I do want to make some statements because, to me, it fits into Revelation 18 here. Right now, we're going through a war with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to see how it involves NATO. We're going to see how it involves the United States. As I'm working on this week's Eye on the World, I am getting a number of headlines. Some headlines would show that it's about to get really much worse. Some headlines show that Ukraine is doing a great job and actually winning. Some headlines are that Putin is so in danger of losing that he could go to nukes. These are all different opinions people write. I have headlines of articles where people are saying Putin is going to be replaced. I have headlines that show Putin will never be replaced. And so again, it's all over the place. But I try to get these opinions from respected news sources just to show you what's out there, what's being talked about. So again, there's a lot going on. But another thing you probably are aware of that came to light today, but some of us have been alert to this the last 5 days. While the world is distracted with Ukraine, they've been working on the Iranian deal, and the Iranian deal is coming through like many of us expected to come through with the present government of the United States of America. Not a very good treaty, not a very good program, giving the Iranians much of things that are going to make it harder on our country. I'm sure the Iranians would have celebration to say, oh, look what we've got now. Look at the terms we have. They would think their life is much better. But many Americans aren't even paying attention to what's going on. But I'm not happy with the Iranian deal, although I knew this was happening because, again, I had enough, like you can find sources out there who are well plugged in. And so I knew this was happening, and sure enough, while there's this distractions going on, they're working on that deal. Also, while we're being distracted here, there are a lot of people keeping an eye on this, but my wife likes to look at these shows, and I do too. Have you ever looked at one of these shows where a journalist goes on their college campus, and they ask questions like, since President Biden's the current president, they'll ask them, they'll say, what good thing has President Biden done? And these college students can't come up with one single thing. Or another time what they'll do is they'll go up to someone and say, President Biden does such and such, and they'll quote something that Donald Trump had done. And when they hear the name Donald Trump, they get all upset and say, oh, that's horrible, how can he have done that? And then the news guy will say, well, it really wasn't Donald Trump who did it, it was Joe Biden who did it. And all of a sudden their answer changes because instead of thinking and evaluating and analyzing, they're getting involved with personalities, either someone they're supposed to like or not like, or what the media tells them to do. So there's so much going on like that. But right now, we have to keep an eye on China and Taiwan. Many of us are keeping an eye on China and Taiwan because what's happening with Ukraine and what's going to happen then with China and Taiwan. So there's just so much going on. I should mention to you, I'm very concerned about the elites of the world. The elites of the world. I'm not so much concerned about political parties. I don't think in the United States, I don't think one political party is righteous and the other is not righteous. I don't think that at all. To me, it's not a matter of which one's righteous. I look at the elites of the world and I look at the policies of each individual. If a party has a platform, to me it's real simple. Which party is against abortion and which party's for abortion? It has nothing to do with the personality of the politicians. There's so much out there being talked about. Who is for protecting our borders, who is not for protecting our borders? Who's helping get inflation down, and who's helping inflation rise? Who's helping gas prices go higher? Who would be helping gas prices get lower? So to me, when I look at things, it's really the policies, it's the ideas, it's the thoughts, it's the principles. I couldn't give a rip about what the person's politics are, what their name is on the ballot. Who has the ideas? It's the way it should be, really? Shouldn't it be that way? We're going for the ideas. Well, the elites of the world are really concerning to me. And one thing we're seeing here is the elites of the world, the globalists as they're called, are really having a heyday. About 2 years ago, I heard that the United States may go socialistic and that the Green New Deal would be accepted. And I laughed and laughed, thinking that is such a ridiculous thought. There's no way our country would go socialistic. There's no way that our country would accept the Green New Deal. Now, I know the polls, that are trustworthy polls, show that the average person doesn't like socialism, and the average person doesn't like the Green New Deal. However, when the bureaucracy involved is pushing it and the media is supporting it, there can be a lot of damage done before, if there is ever regime changes, if there's ever new people voted in or whatever. But right now, this great reset that has been done is motivated by the elites of the world, the official monarchies, the oligarchs, the stealth oligarchs. These are the ones who are really the movers and shakers. Now again, because there is a cell phones that can report things and video things, it's harder to hide some of those things. But if they dummy down people from listening to the truth, people can get away with different things. So I'm concerned about the elites of the world. That's what I'm concerned about. And I'm not one of the elites of the world. And quite frankly, a lot of the people who are fighting politically and fighting economically are going to realize that we're really on the same side. The elites of the world are trying to do what they do. It's just information's out there, too easy to prove. How many U.S. politicians on both parties have such strong business connection with China, which makes them impartial for dealing with China. Guess who else they have business relationships with? Ukraine and Russia. Even some of the big squawk about President Biden's family, greatly invested in Ukraine. Hillary Clinton. Actually, Donald Trump wasn't as much as some, but Mitch McConnell, his wife, has been strongly connected with China for years. And so the point is, politicians, people in powerful positions to serve the people, are oftentimes involved with other things, more globalistic ideas. Also, I want to mention real quickly, there's a lot of move for authoritarianism, and that has been fostered much by the COVID pandemic and the COVID mandates. And actually, the COVID mandates distracted people from a lot that was going on. Now, there were actually people who died from COVID, and that's all very sad when people actually die from COVID. That's very sad. But there were a lot of policies presented that were not scientifically proven, not scientifically backed, but the people were using the COVID mess to further their agenda. Quite frankly, my opinion, the military conflict that's going on, which is real because, again, people are dying, but the military conflict is being, from my point of view, a manipulation, again, to bring in authoritarianism. See, again, that sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? If people would use a pandemic and people would use a military conflict to further political ideas, that's sad. It's very cruel. It's very dangerous because COVID was out there. It was real. The military conflict was real, yet there's a lot of authoritarianism that's going on. Why are we surprised that this is happening? Well, the reason why we're surprised, we had different expectations. We have been distracted as a people by Hollywood, by sports, by Dancing with the Stars, by the Super Bowl, by our favorite shows and our favorite actors and actresses. We've been distracted for a long time by the movies that come out. And so thereby this has been done in clear view, especially with today's modern technology. You can keep up with what's really going on. But still, it's been happening. So there's a lot going on, very serious things. And no matter if you and I would disagree on some of these points, the reason I bring it up is now I'm going to go into Revelation chapter 18. And the reason I want to go into Revelation chapter 18, again, I want you to see some lessons about the ultimate enemy, the traits of Babylon, the merchants, and the lesson that's very important. So again, let's go in there now after I've given you a little quickly summary of what's going on in our world. By the way, remember last week in the study I mentioned to you that the day of the Lord doesn't have to be just one event. That many times if God's involved, it's a day of the Lord. And there are some events that are bigger, and there's some events that are more powerful, and there are some events that are more worldwide, but there are smaller events along the way. I do not believe that what's happening in our world is not the ultimate fulfillment of Revelation 18. Let me repeat that maybe more clearly. What's happening in our world today is not the ultimate fulfillment of Revelation 18. Okay? So it's going to get much worse. But as we see what's happening today in light of Revelation 18, maybe it can help us keep our focus on the great God of the universe, who is either doing things or allowing things, leading up to a time when he's going to bring salvation to the world. Again, so with those thoughts in mind, now let's look at Revelation 18. Whether or not you want to think any of what I said, my analysis of the world's conditions apply or not, let's read Revelation 18. The first section is verses 1 through 3. After these things I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, a cage for every unclean and hateful bird. Okay, that's the ultimate enemy. That's the ultimate enemy, a spiritual world. By the way, I was thinking the other day, I don't know a lot of movies, and my sister probably thinks I've seen a lot of movies because back in the 1990s, when my boys were teenagers, I took them to a variety of movies. And I think she has me set that I've seen a lot of movies. But I did see a movie called K-Pax. And K-Pax is a movie, what it's about, I'm not recommending as a great movie, but I want to tell you about the K-Pax is, it's about a guy who came from outer space, came from a different planet. And it's actually pretty well done in certain elements. So when he gets there, he either appears to be mentally ill and insane, or he's actually from another planet. And they're trying to leave you at the end that you have to guess what you think it is. Well, the reason I bring it up here is, right now, there are a lot of people who look at religious people like us who think either we're insane or maybe we do know something that's going on. In other words, to atheists, we look nuts. The fact that I'm reading from Revelation, they would think, that guy's nuts. Why is he focusing on Revelation? There's real stuff going on in this world, and there is real stuff going on in this world. But I'm just pointing it out that just understand, and some of the other religious people, like I mentioned last week, Pat Robertson started making some comments, and he's getting ridiculed for his comments. I don't happen to agree with his comments completely, but I do agree that religious people should look at the Bible and make proclamations or at least have opinions. But see, he looks nuts. But some people would view what I'm saying tonight as, I'm nuts. And if you believe what I'm saying, you're nuts. If you believe Revelation 18, you're nuts. If you believe in demons, you're nuts. That's what they would say. Obviously, I do believe that, as it says, that Babylon's a place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, a cage for every unclean and hated bird. So that is the ultimate enemy. Understand, many people who say outlandish things, sometimes moronic things, they may be doing the best they can. They just may be deluded. In fact, there'll be a verse later on in the book. When we get to verse 23, you'll see, well, I'll read it now. Verse 23 says, For your merchants were great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. So there's a lot of deception going on. Of course. But see, people say, well, if you say there's deception out there, how come you religious people aren't deceived? Like I said, they're going to criticize us just as we may criticize their opinions. But anyway, we talk about these evil spirits. Verse 3, All the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. The merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. I believe it's a system. I believe there's evil capitalism. I believe there's evil socialism, although, again, there is an article in Edifying the Body this week that I've chosen by Alan West, talking about his support of the Constitution. And so I do personally support the Constitution. I do not put the Constitution on the same level as the Bible. However, I do support the Constitution, and I've chosen an article by Alan West to show my support of the Constitution. But again, there's a lot going on in this world. People who believe all sorts of things have their own constitutions, their own rules and regulations. But again, people are becoming very, very rich. And as the world is trying to squeeze Russia, it's drawing attention to the rich Russians, oligarchs, with their super yachts and their property in Manhattan. And you know where they have the most property? In Florida. But so again, as this is bringing things to light, you're seeing it's actually shining a light on things I didn't know about the Russian elite, because our country is trying to use the Russian elite to work against Putin. So because it's all happening, it's like, oh, I didn't know that wealth was there and that wealth was there. So again, because of this, a light is being shown. But again, the fornication, meaning the surrender, the getting involved in the world's ways, getting in world lust, money, hurting people, ripping off people, abusing people, it's worse than I could have ever imagined. And I'm seeing more glimpse of it now when watching what's going on. We'll skip verses 4 through 6. We'll come back to that later. Let's see. But starting verse 4 begins the new angel talking. Verse 9, the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. Babylon, whatever it is going to come crashing down. And again, I'll be watching for anything that comes crashing down, and I'll be listening to any different theories about Babylon. I just told you mine is, I believe it's a system. I believe when the system comes down, all the people who got rich off of it, whether it be capitalism, socialism, monarchies, whatever system caused people to be rich, when the bubble burst, when all the rich people of the world finally get a taste of what they've been doing to other people, there are going to be a lot of people who've gotten rich off that system saying, oh my, they're lamenting and mourning and crying. Verse 11, the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. Whether it be merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of the most precious wood, or bronze, or iron, or marble, or cinnamon, or incense, fragrant oil and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, chariots, and bodies and souls of men. When it comes crashing down, when the money-making all dries up. See, right now the money-making is dried up for the middle class. The middle class has been crushed, but the rich have gotten richer. And so that's why it's drawn more attention to those of us who knew about it. It's like, wow, when you see the middle class get crushed, and instead of elevating the rest of the world to be like the best they can be, is taking the middle class and trying to make them poor. And that's what they even do in schools. Right now in schools, instead of people being excelling in school, they have some goofy ideas, and they think, well, we're going to help the poor in the school, so we'll help the poor in the school by making the richer or the better or the smarter dumber. And yes, that does pulls people closer together, but it's not exceptional. It's not excelling. And so again, these ideas which are talked in the name of fairness, while it may produce certain amount of closing the gap, but it's not bringing it, it's not lifting people up. It's tearing people down. Verse 14, the fruit that your soul longed for has gone from you, and all things which are rich and splendid are gone from you. See, right now the rich are still prospering. The rich are getting richer through the pandemic. But the day will come when the rich will have the same fate as the poor. And boy, they're going to hate it. See, those people who've been poor, they've kind of grown accustomed to it. And they've learned to adapt. There's too many suicides going on. There's too much sadness going on. But when rich people finally get poor, oh man, it's going to be horrible because they just are not used to it. Verse 15, the merchants of these things who became rich by her will stand at a distance for fear of her torment and weeping and wailing. Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stone and pearls. For in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who travel by ship and sailors, and all who made trade on the sea, stood at a distance, and they cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning. What is like this great city? What happened to this great city? The parallel is Babylon is pictured as a great city, and so some of you will think it is an actual city, a literal city, when I believe it's a system crashing. Verse 19, they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing and saying, alas, alas, that great city, in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth. In 1 hour she's made desolate. Verse 20 says, rejoice over her, O heaven, and holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. So the Babylonian system has crushed apostles. It has crushed prophets. It has crushed the common man. Now we come to verses 21 through 24, the third angel. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, here's what it's saying, thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be overthrown down, will be thrown down, and shall not be found anymore. You're not going to find music. You're not going to find harpists and musicians and flautists. Trumpeters shall not be heard in anymore. The beautiful music will be gone. The craftsmen of any craft will be gone. The sound of a millstone, will not be heard anymore. It'll be gone. The light of a lamp shall not shine on you anymore. It'll be more darkness and trouble. And the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard anymore. People will not be rejoicing. There's going to be a time when there's a lot of turmoil in the world. And then you say, Dave, is this the time right now? No, this is just a precursor of the time. As bad as it is now, as upsetting it can be for us now, it's going to get a whole lot worse if you believe the book of Revelation, as most of us do. Then it says, for your merchants were the great men of the earth, and by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. There's a lot of deception going on. Again, I made the comment a couple months ago in the sermon. I have to ask myself the question, am I the one being deceived? And I ask myself the question of that because I'll prove to you that I'm willing to look at that. But I'm telling you, you have to look at that too. And all the people out there who are very boldly ridiculing some of us, they may be the ones to find out they're the ones who are deceived. I'm working on a presentation as too about don't follow the crowd. But I don't want to get into that tonight. Don't follow the crowd. And when we don't follow the crowd, I don't follow the crowd medically. I listen to all options. I don't follow the crowd medically. I don't follow the crowd religiously. Neither do you. You're part of a church of God. You're part of a congregations around the world that you believe. You don't have the same view that most of the world has. I'm not even talking about Muslims and Hindus. I'm talking about Christians. We don't want to follow the crowd. And of course, we want to be agreeable, serving, loving people. But see, that's the thing is I believe they're trying to take people's thinking ideas away, trying to take their thinking skills away. And this congregation is built on freedom. And this congregation is built on having your views. And if your views are different from someone else, make sure you're kind to other people. But we don't believe in groupthink. There's a lot of sorcery going on. There's a lot of groupthink going on in churches and also in the world right now. There's a whole lot of groupthink going on in the world. Just because so-and-so says a mask works, does the mask work? And then they, by the way, they finally come out and say, well, the mask didn't work as well as I said. Now, someone could say, well, Dave, didn't you know that a year ago? Yes, I did. Yes, I was aware of that a year ago. I can still learn from these projects and these studies, but a lot of these things I was well sourced in the first place. As you are, you were well sourced in the first place. And now some of the things that were about some of the problems of the jab, some of the problems of the jab that some of us have known for a year or year and a half are finally coming to light because now it's acceptable to talk about. It was not acceptable. In fact, you would get kicked off a social media. My wife, she tells me all the time, I'll go home tonight and she'll say, well, I'm in Facebook jail again. She gets kicked off Facebook. And the thing she gets crazy for how she gets kicked off Facebook, she quotes sources of scientists. She quotes sources of the media. And some of the fact checkers are so ridiculous. She was telling one day Janine Case got kicked off of something. This may have happened a year ago. She goes, well, Janine got kicked off because Janine was quoting something written by the government. And so again, it's just amazing. But my wife laughs about it. She goes, I'm in Facebook jail again. But she only gets kicked off for like 3 days, and then she gets back on again. Then she puts something else on that's factual and good, but it goes against their sensitivities. The problem is that many of the things she's been putting on for a year are now being talked about by the establishment. She was right all along. You don't follow the crowd. Verse 24, and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and all who were slain on the earth. So again, there are going to be people who are caught up in this, whether they die from it directly or whether they die from repercussions of it. You know, there's not everyone dies a horrible way. Some people live a deceived life and die peacefully, but some people get caught up in a lot of controversy, and we're entering a world of a lot of controversy. Well, I do want to conclude over in verses 4 through 6. Because I told you we wanted to talk about the ultimate enemy, the traits of Babylon, the traits of the merchants. But the main lesson, and this will not surprise you, those of you who know my presentations, my whole thing is, what are we going to do about it? Because if we just talk about bad things, what are we going to do about it? So let's read verses 4 through 6, and here's what we should do about it. I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she has rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she's mix double for her. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen, and I'm no widow, and she will not see sorrow. Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. Again, the most important part is verse 4. Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, lest you receive of her plagues. So because this world's going crazy, there's a lot happening in the globalists, there's a lot happening that's really chaotic. There's a lot happening probably due to demonism. There's a lot happening probably due to deception. And while you don't want to be too hard on people who are doing it, you do want to analyze what's going on. And you want to have strong opinions about what's going on. And you want to have a right reaction. So make sure, again, as you see what's happening in Babylon, that you come out of her and you live a godly life. So again, I wanted this actually to be an encouraging presentation. We did focus on some of the things that are happening, some of the things that irritate me, some of the things that irritate you. But we can look at Revelation 18 to recognize what's really going on and try to have the right response. Well, Dixon's going to play another song. I'm going to say a closing prayer. The song he's going to play is by Philip Bliss, entitled, I Gave My Life for Thee. if you'll bow your heads. Our loving Father in heaven, Father, we thank you so much for a chance to be together. Father, we appreciate the chance to look into your word. We try to see how the timing of the scriptures and revelation, how they can apply today, even if they have a greater fulfillment in the future. We do want to learn from your word. We want to spend time in your word. We want to look for education. We want to look for doctrine, reproof, and we also like to look for encouragement. So, Father, let us be grounded with you, grounded with your word. Let us be grounded in fellowship. Let's be grounded in love. Help us, Father, to have comfort with you and help us to be comfort to others. Help us to glorify your name. Let us help people in these really tough times. So, Father, please continue to be the God, the great God who watches over all things. Please bring your plan to pass, and please help us to be a part of it. We ask your dismissal in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.